Nobody warned me about the silence, not the peaceful kind, not the quiet you earn after decades of noise and deadlines, and the relentless forward motion of a working life. I had imagined that kind of silence, had looked forward to it, honestly, for years. I mean the other kind, the kind that arrives on a Monday morning when there is nowhere you are supposed to be, when the alarm doesn't go off because you turned it off permanently 6 months ago, and somewhere in the back of your mind you still feel vaguely guilty about that. The kind of silence that sits in a house that is completely in order and somehow completely wrong. The kind that has a weight to it, a texture, the kind that after a few weeks starts to feel less like rest and more like something you cannot name but cannot ignore. I retired at 67, and for the first 8 months of my retirement, I was by every external measurement living the dream. No obligations, no schedule, no one else's emergency becoming mine. Freedom, in the literal sense, the freedom I had been working toward for 45 years. And I was emptier than I had ever been in my working life. I did not understand it. I was ashamed of it. Initially, the way you are ashamed of something that seems ungrateful. I had what people spend their lives working toward. I had the time, the security, the absence of pressure. What kind of person feels empty inside all of that? A very common kind, as it turns out. More common than anyone is willing to say out loud. Because retirement, in the way that most people experience it, is one of the least prepared for transitions in a human life. We spend 40 years preparing financially for it. We spend almost no time preparing for what happens to a person when the structure that has been organizing their identity, their days, and their sense of purpose is suddenly, completely, and permanently removed. That is what I want to talk about today, because I found my way through it. And I want to tell you how, and more importantly, I want to give you the warning I needed before I walked into it unprepared. Before I go further, if anything I say today reaches you or someone you love, please like this video. Share it with a retiree in your life who might be feeling something they haven't been able to name. And please subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. These conversations are the ones I needed at 65 and nobody was having. Every share means they reach someone who needs them right now. It costs nothing, and it might change everything. Now, let me tell you who I was before retirement, and what retirement did to that person. I was my work, not in the way that sounds, not obsessively, not to the exclusion of everything else. I had a family, I had interests, I had a life outside the office, but my work was the scaffolding, the invisible structure that held everything else in place. It told me when to wake up and why. And it gave me problems that required my specific skills to solve. It surrounded me with people who needed something from me and whom I needed in return. It gave me a clear, daily, repeated answer to the question that most people never consciously ask, but that the brain is asking constantly underneath everything else. What am I for? I had an answer to that question every day for 45 years. And then one Friday afternoon, with a cake and a card and a room full of people who genuinely wished me well, the answer was removed. And I discovered slowly in the weeks and months that followed that I had never built a replacement. I had assumed the replacement would build itself, that the freedom would fill with meaning naturally, that the hobbies I had been meaning to pursue would emerge and sustain me, that the slower pace would feel rich rather than thin. That retirement was a destination I would arrive at and recognize as where I had always been trying to go. It was not a destination. It was a beginning I was completely unprepared for. Does that sound familiar to anyone you know? The emptiness had a specific shape. I want to describe it precisely because I think precision matters here more than comfort. It was not depression. I want to say that clearly. Depression is a clinical condition, and I am not a doctor, and I am not describing symptoms. What I am describing is something different, something that I now understand is extremely common among newly retired people, and that has its own specific character. It was the absence of being needed, of mattering in the daily, functional, someone is waiting for this sense. I had spent 45 years being needed in exactly that way, by colleagues, by clients, by the ongoing requirements of a job that did not pause when I was not attending to it. And that neededness, which I had sometimes experienced as pressure and occasionally as burden, had been performing a function I had never noticed until it was gone. It had been telling me every day that I existed, that my presence in the world had effects, that the gap where I stood would be noticed if I were not standing in it. In the first year of retirement, that daily confirmation disappeared, and in its absence I discovered how much of my sense of self had been built upon it. The second component of the emptiness was time, not the presence of time. The presence of time was exactly what I had wanted, but the quality of time without structure is completely different from the quality of time within it. Unstructured time does not feel like freedom to a person whose entire adult life has been built around structure. It feels initially like a hall of mirrors. Every morning the same open expanse of hours. Every day a replica of the previous one. The weeks beginning to blur into each other in a way that created a strange and specific anxiety. The anxiety of a life that was passing without the feeling of having been used. The third component, and this one I found hardest to admit, was identity. I had been a professional for 45 years. That professional identity, the title, the role, the clear and legible answer to the question of who I was in the world, was gone. And what replaced it was a question I did not know how to answer. Who was I now? Not a dramatic question, not an existential crisis in the cinematic sense. Just a quiet, daily, persistent absence of the answer I had always had ready. I found out that I had outsourced my identity to my occupation for so long that I had never developed a parallel one, a personal one that existed independently of what I did and could survive the removal of the doing. I was 68 years old, and I did not know who I was without my work. If you are reading this before retirement, if you are 5 years out or 10 years out or even 1 year out, please hear what I am about to say. Please hear it as the warning I needed and did not receive. The financial preparation is not enough. It is necessary, absolutely necessary, but it is not sufficient. You must also prepare the other thing. The answer to the question your brain will ask on the first Monday morning when there is nowhere to be. What am I for now? If you do not have an answer ready, not a vague one, not a list of things you might do sometime, you will find out what the emptiness feels like from the inside. And finding out from the inside is a much harder and longer route to the answer than preparing for it before you arrive. And right here, please, 1 second. Hit like on this video. Share it specifically with someone approaching retirement who hasn't had this conversation yet. Subscribe if you haven't. This is the conversation the financial advisors don't have with you. And it might be the most important one. I want to be honest about the things I tried that did not work, because I think the honest version of this is more useful than the polished one. I tried filling the time, the first instinct, the most common one I have since discovered among newly retired people was to fill the emptiness with activity. More golf, more travel, more of the things I had been telling myself I would do when I had time. And the activity helped in the short term, in the way that any stimulus helps in the short term. But it did not address the emptiness, it covered it. And covering something and resolving it are not the same thing. The emptiness persisted underneath the activity. Because activity is not the same as purpose, keeping busy is not the same as mattering, And what the emptiness was pointing at was not a shortage of things to do. It was a shortage of reasons why the doing mattered. I tried stepping back into work, consultancy. Initially, the version of my former role that felt like it could fill the gap without fully re-entering the thing I had left. And it helped more than the activity had. The feeling of being needed again, of specific expertise being sought, of solving problems that only I could solve in quite that way. That was real. But it was also a delay, a way of postponing the question rather than answering it. And eventually I understood that what I needed was not a return to the old identity, but the construction of a new one. That was the hardest thing, and also the most important. Here is what actually worked, what pulled me through the emptiness to the other side of it. I am going to tell you specifically, because specifically is what matters, not general encouragement, not vague advice about finding your passion. The specific things. The first was contribution, not activity, contribution. The specific felt difference between doing something and doing something for someone. I began to volunteer, not casually, but with genuine commitment, in a role that required the actual skills I had spent decades developing. And what came back when I did that was not the same as the professional identity I had lost. It was something better. It was the knowledge that what I knew and what I could do still had effects in the world, still changed things for people who needed them changed, without the structure of employment telling me when and how and for what reward. The second was chosen community, not the accidental community of a workplace, which I had been part of for 45 years and had taken entirely for granted, but a deliberately, actively, consciously constructed community of people I chose to be around. This required more effort than I had anticipated. Community does not assemble itself in retirement the way it assembles itself in a working life. You have to build it, intentionally, with the same seriousness you once brought to building a career. And the effort is worth every bit of what it costs. The third was a new relationship with time itself. This took the longest. The understanding that unstructured time is not a problem to be solved, but a skill to be learned. That the ability to be fully present in an afternoon with no agenda, to sit in the garden, to read slowly, to have a conversation that goes nowhere productive, is not laziness. It is the specific hard-won, genuinely valuable capacity that a full working life rarely develops, and that retirement, if you approach it correctly, can finally give you. I did not arrive at that capacity quickly. I am not sure I have fully arrived at it even now, but I am further along than I was, and the further along I get, the more I understand that the ability to be fully present in your own life, without needing it to produce something, is not the consolation prize of retirement. It is the whole point. Here is what I know now. At 74, 7 years into a retirement that nearly broke me in the first year, and that I now would not trade for any version of the life I had before it. The emptiness was not a malfunction, it was information. The most specific, urgent, and ultimately useful information my life had ever given me. It was pointing, with a precision that 45 years of busyness had never allowed, at exactly what was missing. Not in the retirement, in the life I had been living before retirement. In the version of myself I had built so thoroughly around function and productivity and the daily confirmation of being needed that I had never developed the parts of a person that exist, independently of all of that. The retirement revealed the gap, but the gap had been there all along. And here is the thing I most want you to hear, the thing that I wish someone had said to me, not at 65 but at 45, at 35. You are building, right now, the person who will retire, not just the financial situation, the person. And the person you are building, the identity you are assembling, the sources of meaning you are cultivating, or failing to cultivate, the community you are investing in or neglecting, the inner life you are developing or deferring, that person is the one who will walk into retirement and either have something to stand on, discover that the scaffolding was everything and the building was thinner than they knew. Build the building now, while you still have the scaffolding up, while work is still providing the structure and the community and the daily answer to the question of what you are for. Use that time to develop the parts of yourself that do not depend on work, the relationships that are not professional, the contributions that are not compensated, the interests that produce nothing except the specific satisfaction of being genuinely engaged with something. Because the retirement will come, whether it comes at 60 or 67 or 72, it will come, and when it comes, it will ask you the question, what am I for now? And the quality of your answer, the depth of it, the honesty of it, the degree to which it is truly yours, rather than borrowed from the identity that just ended, will determine almost everything about the years that follow. Here is the warning given to you now, directly. Most people do not prepare for this. The financial industry has built an entire infrastructure around helping you prepare financially. Nobody has built an equivalent infrastructure around helping you prepare as a person. And so the majority of retirees walk into retirement carrying a version of themselves that was entirely dependent on the structure that just ended, and spend the first years of what should be the finest chapter of their lives finding out in the loneliest possible way what was underneath. You do not have to be one of them. The preparation is available. The questions are not complicated. Who am I when I am not what I do? What would I contribute to the world if contribution were not compensated? Who are the people I want to be genuinely close to, and what would it take to actually be close to them? What does a fully inhabited day feel like when there is nothing it needs to produce? Start asking those questions now, not at 65, now, because I am 74. And the years I wasted finding the answers that these questions would have given me earlier are the only ones I genuinely regret. And the years since I found them, the slower, more present, more genuinely purposeful years, are the ones I would not give back for anything. The second act is not a diminishment. It is the first time for many people that they get to live entirely as themselves, without the job's requirements shaping the day, without the career's demands defining the choices, without anyone else's emergency becoming the primary content of their life. That life is available to you, all of it, every bit of it, but only if you build the person who can inhabit it before you arrive. Please start building. If this reached you today, share it with someone approaching retirement who has never had this conversation, with a retiree who is feeling something they haven't been able to name. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and leave a comment. Tell me what your retirement has felt like, or tell me what you are doing now to prepare for it. I read every single comment, every one, and at 74, every comment that tells me this, reach someone, is the best possible use of the time I have left to say it.